By the time I finished Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, I had a rush of electric empowerment run through my body. There's very few games out there that can make you feel this much satisfaction upon completion. My time was appreciated, the game didn't overstay its welcome, nor that the side stuff got repetitive, and as for the story, this game plays it safe and plays it spectacularly well. After the dismal end of Activision's ownership of Marvel games, Spider-Man fell into the hands of Sony first-party studio Insomniac. And the first Spider-Man game under their hood was an amazing revival of the iconic superhero, and certainly delivered one of the best experiences starring the Wallcrawler. Its narrative felt much more grounded and realised, the actors brought true personality to their roles, and the writing worked so well in rebooting the same old tale and same old foes we've seen a dozen times before. Marvel's Spider-Man was a true treat in gameplay also, having a grand new combat system that borrowed elements from Treyarch's Spider-Man 2 and just made it deeper and more responsive. With only 2 or 3 buttons you can dash around the small arena brawls, pulling off multiple different moves, and it all looks super cinematic, well in line with the narrative of the game. This also is what happened to the iconic web swinging, revamped, remade, and works astonishingly well with the urban city of New York. But before a big sequel to Peter's journey, we have been treated to a new side game, introducing us to a brand new Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Taking place after the first game and the City That Never Sleeps DLC, Miles Morales is nearing the end of his training when he and Peter Parker are protecting a convoy keeping the raging supervillain Rhino. This game follows its predecessor by starting out with the action up to 11, with familiar villain Rhino escaping his confinement, and you, now in the shoes of Miles Morales, and Peter attempts to stop the man-made beast of the justice system. After an intense brawl sequence rampaging through a shopping mall, Rhino eventually gets the finishing blow on Peter. Yeah, it's only took him half a dozen games or so. But this gives Miles the opportunity to overcome his predecessor and fulfill his origin story's destiny. Just from the starting cutscene with Miles arriving in Harlem, listening to Where We Come From by Lecrae, walking through the city helping passers-by and commenting on a Spider-Man wall painting, we quickly establish that Miles is an artsy and helpful teen who's always trying to do his best, and he's confident in telling the street artist to leave some room for the new Spider-Man, straight up knowing that he'll make it on the wall someday too. To which at the end of the game we see he does. This is what I love about Miles. There's a fine line between being cocky and arrogant to being confident and likeable, and Miles most certainly is the latter. He's confident he can make it because he's always working his way to that position. He doesn't ever think that the responsibility and popularity of being the next Spider-Man is going to be handed to him on a silver platter, and this confidence resonates well with our own lives and responsibilities of growing up into young adults. Back to Rhino, Miles smashes him in the face with what is named a Venom Blast. See, it seems Miles' radioactive spider gave him a little more than Peter's. Miles has bioelectric energy pulsing through him. This unlocks a plethora of new energy-based moves you can pull off to keep your enemies stunned, do increased damage, break foes' blocks, and keep your combos going. And these moves not only build upon the great flowing combat system of the first game, but also keeps up that fluidity and speed within combat, further ensuring that it doesn't become worn out and repetitive. After the game's intro, we get introduced to our new villain group known as the Underground, using morphing weapons-based technology that gives them large swords, shields, and huge fists, very unique and colourful foes. This technology is created by a brand new villain to the Spider-Man video game series, the Tinkerer, a genius inventor and head of the Underground group who turns out to be Miles' friend Finn Mason. Getting introduced to the Tinkerer over family dinner party, the game establishes that Finn and Miles are close friends who want the same thing. They want to save Harlem from a corrupt energy company, Roxxon. However, where Miles is trying to defend the people of Harlem, Finn is only out for revenge and wants to destroy the company's new plaza, no matter the consequences. We get a great build-up between these characters, and it makes the Tinkerer a much deeper and grounded villain than what your first impressions and the game's trailers made her out to be. The other anti-hero slash villain we get in Miles Morales is the Prowler, who hasn't been in a Spider-Man game since Friend or Foe on the PlayStation 2. The Prowler is also a very humanized, revealing him in the game to be the uncle to Miles, Miles being the catalyst that sets the Prowler back on the right track, and this game has a thrilling redemption arc for the character and a very cool boss battle. While Miles Morales may not have the biggest roster of villains, the ones it does have bring either a spectacle to the game or an emotional arc to Miles, or even both. You'd be mistaken in thinking Miles Morales was a copy of Peter Parker. The game well sets up that this young teen from Brooklyn is becoming more than another Spider-Man. He's his own Spider-Man. And while the story beats play this out well, so does the gameplay. In addition to Miles' new Venom powers I mentioned earlier, we also get introduced to his second new ability, Camouflage, being able to turn invisible for a short amount of time. Works very well with the newly improved stealth mechanics that the previous Spider-Man game fell upon. No longer when doing the hideout side missions are we forced into combat when the next wave spawns in. Miles Morales allows us to complete everything 100% stealth, if we please, and the new camouflage mechanic couldn't make it any more satisfying in doing so. You can unlock skills in which fighting whilst camouflaged can improve your Venom attacks, and this just highlights how well all this game's mechanics flow well into each other. Outside of the story and combat, Miles truly feels like his own in his web swinging animations, having a confident yet less experienced flailing kind of style to his movement. His unlockable costumes were one of the most stylish and creative wardrobes I've ever seen in a superhero game. The first time where I felt like I wanted to wear every single one of them. Some other little pointers that this game improves and adds are like when you are swinging, as you come down you hear the bustle of New York traffic and it fades out as you rise again, really adding to the thrill of web swinging above the bustle of the life below you. And the web swinging is deepened further with new acrobatic tricks that look stunning. All of your side activities and crimes are now held together in an in-game app accessed by swiping on the touchpad. This is really intuitive and handy and means no more pause in the game to just access these side quests. The side activities themselves are a lot more varied this time, with more unique and interesting things to do rather than it always being a group of enemies to beat up. The game may have you helping fellow citizens with usual life problems, and this felt really refreshing from just battling the same thugs all of the time. However, crimes themselves are also improved, with your generic foes now able to leave a fight with you, steal a pedestrian's car and try to get away, and this is what happened in the first crime I did in the game, and it felt really dynamic. And there's more setups for the crimes this time around, one even having them take control of a gunship. So you've battled Rhino, defeated the Tinkerer, and your uncle the Prowler has handed himself and the Roxxon head into the police. New York and Harlem is saved, and not for a second did I miss Peter Parker. But that's not that Miles overshadowed his predecessor in any way, but because the game's story, the game's new mechanics, and the pacing of it all never had me wishing it was anything different. When Peter came back at the end, it was like watching a Batman movie if Heath Ledger's Joker walked into the room, that feeling of a well-loved face returning. In the same room as the new character, Not that one or the other has more likability from me anymore, but more so they both are equal, with Miles in the same scene even copying the move Peter does at the beginning of the game, further emphasizing that Miles is now ready, earning that spot next to Peter on the artist's wall and solidifying himself as Spider-Man. If you're a Spider-Man fan, if you're a new PlayStation 5 owner, even if you just own the PS4, if you've made it this far into the video, you owe it to yourself to play Miles Morales, play the New Game Plus, and get that platinum. It's well worth your time and investment, and in my humble opinion, with all of its improvements it made over Insomniac's first webhead game, Spider-Man Miles Morales may just be the greatest Spider-Man game ever made.